Thanks for coming. Well, I'm glad it's giving me a nice cool day down here in South Carolina. It's good. We left New Jersey, it was 88 degrees. And I said, heck man, that's not hot enough. Let's get to Columbia. So thank you all for having me. We appreciate it very much. It's good to be back in South Carolina. I've been coming here pretty consistently since 2010. I was elected governor of New Jersey back in 2009. In 2010, I came down here and campaigned for Nikki Haley when she was running for governor the first time. Came back down here in 2012 to campaign for Mitt Romney when he was running for president. Came back here as the chairman of the Republican Governors Association in 2014 and campaigned again for Governor Haley. Came back here in 2016 and campaigned for Donald Trump when he was running for president in 2016. And then came back again in 2018 to campaign for my old friend Henry McMaster. And when I say old friend, it's not that I'm calling Henry old. He would be very offended by that. But we are longtime friends because when Henry was the Attorney General here in South Carolina, I was the United States Attorney in New Jersey, and we did a joint investigation together. And I remember when Henry called me because his office was investigating the same fraudster that my office was. And this fraudster was ripping off people in both South Carolina and New Jersey. And so we were both independently investigating it. And you all, knowing Governor McMaster so well, will know this story is true. He called, and my secretary came in and said, the Attorney General of South Carolina is on the phone. So I got on, and Henry got on the phone, and he introduced himself, and then he said, we gave him the guy who we were investigating. He said, you familiar with it? I said, I am. And he said, got a question for you. He said, we going to fight with each other, or are we going to work together? He said, because if we work together, he said, we're going to be able to put this boy away for a long time. And I said, let's work together, Henry, and we did. And we put him away in federal prison for a very long time with a lot of help from the Attorney General of South Carolina. So I've been down here a lot over the last now almost 10 years. And it's good to be back. When I was here in 15 and 16, I was one of the small field of 17 people running for President of the United States. And it's always interesting to see how the world changes. And I stopped over at the Palmetto Club a little while ago to see a group of folks from the county Republican organization. And one woman came to me and asked me, she said, why are you in this race? I thought, that's a fair question. Why am I in this race? So I figured that's where I'd start tonight. If you asked me a year ago if I was going to be in this race, I probably would have told you no. We have my wife, Mary Patsy. Why don't you stand up, Mary Patsy, so everybody gets to see you. My wife's with me tonight. Yes. And she, just so you know, if you come up to her later and you detect a certain toughness, that has nothing to do with New Jersey. That has to do with the fact that she is number 9 of 10 children. So she's been fighting with 6 older brothers since the day she was born and 2 older sisters. And I'm glad that she's traveling with me. We have 4 children between the ages of 20 and 30. And so when I ran for president the last time, a number of those children were still at home. And she couldn't travel with me nearly as much as she wanted to. But this time, there's really nothing left back there for her. So she's got to travel with me now. So I'm glad that she's with me. But when we started to look together as a couple, because you can't do this as one person. If you're married and you decide you want to run for president, it is a team effort. And if both members of the team are not with it, it's not impossible, but it's pretty hard. And as we started to look at this race, we became very, very concerned because both of us feel that Joe Biden has let this country down in just about every way you could think of. He ran for president in 2020 saying that he was going to bring the country together, that he was going to be a moderate leader for the country, and try to bring the 2 extremes of both parties into a place where they could work together. And a lot of people, not me, but a lot of people voted for him based on that idea. And he came into office and he ran as far to the left as he could, placating the far left of his own party, spending enormous amounts of money, and creating the worst inflation that we've had in this country because of his government spending since the 1970s. Shouldn't be surprised about that, though, by the way, because when you ask Joe Biden who his favorite president is of his lifetime, he says Jimmy Carter. That's not a joke, that's true. So we should have known when he said that this was not going to be a movie that ended well for us. Runaway inflation. He stripped away our energy independence and made us once again dependent upon Middle East energy and South American energy. He had that awful withdrawal from Afghanistan, which shamed our effort there and caused the loss of life of a number of young men and women in our military that did not deserve that. And he has led us to a place in the world where we are no longer feared and respected. You know, when you sit down for a meeting with a fellow head of state in the Oval Office of the White House, as he did just a day or two ago with the President of Israel, and you fall asleep in the middle of the meeting, I'm sorry, everybody. That means you're past your sell-by date. Okay? It means it's time to go. If you can't stay awake in your own office in the middle of the afternoon when you're talking to the President of Israel, it's probably time to go back to Wilmington. So, first motivation for getting into this race was we have to get rid of Joe Biden. And by the way, I want to be clear that I pray every night for Joe Biden's good health. Not only because he's our president, but because of who our vice president is. Because let me tell everybody, you think this is bad. Can't even imagine what that show would look like. That's reason number one. Reason number two is, I thought by this time, given everything that's happened, that the Republican Party would realize that races that look backwards are not winning races. Candidates who look backwards are not winning candidates, and they're not leaders. I will tell you this, I am tired of hearing about the 2020 election. And by the way, you know, I'm from New Jersey, if you want to talk about voter fraud, okay? We take a back seat only to Illinois. In fact, one of my predecessors, Governor Brendan Byrne, who has since just passed away, he used to say that he made his wife promise that when he died, that she would bury him in Jersey City, New Jersey, so that he could remain active in politics. So I'm not naive, everybody. I know that there's always a little bit of monkey business that goes on in every election, but not enough to change the result of an election in 6 states. So let's start there. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Joe Biden's sleeping in the White House tonight, and it's our fault. Okay, it's our fault. And by us, I mean Republicans who allowed President Trump to do the things that he did and empowered him. And we've been empowering him ever since he left the White House. And he's been taking advantage of us as a result. Now, the most egregious one I just heard today. Now, I remember, because I was in that 2016 race, that one of the things Donald Trump said on that stage, among many things that he said in that stage, was, I'm a billionaire. I'm the richest guy on this stage. I don't need anybody else's money. And nobody can buy me or own me, unlike these other guys who are all out there asking for money. I'm going to be just for you. Okay. So then how do you explain this? His FEC reports have come out. 50 cents of every dollar that's being donated to his presidential campaign is going to pay his personal legal fees. 50 cents of every dollar. $17 million so far. Now, if you're a billionaire, I know how to count to a billion. 17 million, I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I'm not great at it, but 17 million is less than a billion. And if you get yourself in all this legal trouble, pay your own legal fees. Instead, he's taking $10, $25, $50 from middle-class Americans across this country who believe in him and want him to use that money to get reelected President of the United States, and he's taking it and he's putting it in his own pocket to pay his lawyers. It is disgraceful. It's beneath the office he asks for, and that alone should disqualify him from being our nominee in 2024. But that's not all. The whole damn family's on the grift. Okay? His daughter and her husband. Again, Jared Kushner, the son of a multi-billionaire from my home state. He gets sent to the Middle East to negotiate on behalf of our country. I guess the president sent him because he's such an expert on the Middle East, having been a real estate developer in New Jersey developing garden apartments. I'm sure that's why he sent him. I'll tell you why he sent him. We didn't see it till 6 months after. 6 months after Donald Trump leaves office, Jared Kushner gets on a plane and goes to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and he comes home with $2 billion of Saudi money to seed his investment fund, of which he will get a percentage of that money every year for the rest of his life, whether he makes a nickel for the Saudis or not. If anyone else in this country had first hired their daughter and son-in-law into the White House and then set them up to get $2 billion of money from the Saudis, there'd be outrage. But somehow with Donald Trump, he's skating past that. We can't let it, because let me tell you, we put him back there, the same thing's going to happen. The exact same thing's going to happen. Lastly, I run into people all the time who say, all right, I get it. He lies. He's selfish. But I like his policies. So I'm going to vote for him because I like his policies. All right. I like a lot of the policies he pursued, too. And I want to remind all of you, I was the first person to endorse him when I dropped out of the race in 2016. The first governor in this country to endorse him. The first former candidate to endorse him. I chaired his transition to the White House. I chaired his opioid and drug abuse commission. This one will keep you up tonight, you especially. I want you to think about this now. I played Hillary Clinton in debate prep. Me, Hillary Clinton. Took me a while. All I had to, there's a number of things I had to learn, but I won't go into that. I played Joe Biden in debate prep in 2020 for Donald Trump. I had to take a few sedatives before I did, but I worked it out. My point to you is, I'm not coming down here in South Carolina as some never-Trumper. I worked hard to get him elected in 2016. I worked hard every day to make him the best president he possibly could be for all of us, and supported a lot of his policies. But he failed us. He failed us. He said he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare. And with a Republican Congress, he didn't get it done. You remember this one. He was going to build a big, beautiful wall across the entire border of Mexico, and Mexico was going to pay for it. Well, let me tell you what happened after 4 years. And you can go on the Department of Homeland Security website and see it for yourself. In 4 years, he built 52 miles of new wall. 52 miles. And by the way, we're still waiting for the first peso from Mexico to pay for that. Not a nickel from Mexico. to pay for it. If you're trying to do the math in your head, I did this before, building the wall at that pace, he would have to be president for another 110 years to get the entire wall done. He failed us. He said, I will balance the budget in 4 years because I'm a businessman and I know how to balance budgets. And you know what he did? He added $6 trillion to the national debt in 4 years. Shocking. But it shouldn't be, because this is the guy who in my home state sent his 3 casinos bankrupt 3 times. Now let me ask you a question. Who can't make money with a casino? I mean, how damn stupid do you have to be to not be able to make money in a casino? They always win. How many of you have ever come out of casino saying like, man, 5th time in a row I've won? I never have. $6 trillion. One other quick story. When I was governor of New Jersey, I inherited an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget in 2010. And we balanced that budget without raising taxes. We cut 836 individual programs out to balance that budget. The reason I bring it up is because when that was going on, there was a lot of publicity about it. Democrats wanted me to raise taxes. I said no. And a friend of mine called me with an idea, Donald Trump. He called me from New York and he said, Chris, I see this big budget problem you have. I got an idea for you. I said, what's that? He goes, go bankrupt. I said, no, Donald. States are not allowed by law to go bankrupt. We can't go bankrupt. He goes, no, look, just do it. He said, it'll be 3 years before it gets through the courts, and everybody will think you're a hero. We shouldn't be surprised. $6 trillion to the national debt. So on the issues that you care about, if you say, I know Donald Trump's not a good person, I know he lies, I know he's broken the law, I know he's grifting for himself and for his family, but I like his policies, I'd ask you a question. Why the hell would you hire him to implement those policies? He's proven he can't do it. Now, our country now is in a circumstance much like I think we were in the late 70s. For those of us who are old enough in this room to remember the late 70s, when Joe Biden's favorite president was president. Energy crisis, runaway inflation, people worried about jobs, the Soviets invading Afghanistan, boycotting the Olympics, hostages in Iran, and a president who said it was our fault, that we were under a malaise, and that it was our fault that America wasn't great. What did we do when confronted with that? In 1980, what we did was turn to a conservative governor from a blue state who knew how to solve problems. What we need in the government now is someone who knows how to run the government and solve those problems and has done it under the toughest circumstances. With all due respect to the other governors in this race who all had Republican legislatures, every minute of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year that I was governor, I had a Democratic legislature. Every day. I would have given my right arm for a week with a Republican legislature. They would have never slept the things we would have been able to do, but I didn't. So what I had to learn was how to bring people together and get things done. And we didn't do a whole bunch of liberal things, everybody. We reformed the pension system for public employees and saved taxpayers $120 billion. We made public employees for the first time contribute to the cost of their health insurance, so the taxpayers didn't have to pay every nickel of it. We fired the entire city of Camden Police Department because they were the most dangerous city in America, and there were 400 of these cops who were failing every day. Their union wouldn't let us change, so we fired all of them. And we brought in new police, trained them in community policing and violence de-escalation. And what's happened in the 10 years since we fired that entire police force. The murder rate in Camden is down 75%. We need to have someone who's done law enforcement to get crime under control in our cities all across this country. What's happening in our cities is disgraceful, it's unacceptable, and if I'm President of the United States as a former U.S. attorney, violent criminals who carry guns will go to jail and they'll stay there. Ronald Reagan understood this. I remember sitting in my dorm room in 1980 in September at the University of Delaware, and I was going to get to vote for president for the first time in my life. I turned 18, and I got my absentee ballot. It wasn't rigged. It was actually a real ballot. I only got one of them, only filled out one of them. And I sat there, and I put the X in the box next to Ronald Reagan because he was the person who told me, I know how to run this, I know how to fix this, and I am going to make your life full of hope and aspirations fulfilled. And I trusted him, and I voted for him, and it's the greatest vote for president I've ever made in my life because he kept his word to us. We need to do the same thing again. We need to take a chance on somebody who knows how to do this. So that's why I'm in this race. And I'll say one last thing to you about all of my colleagues who are in this race as well. I have to tell you, I just got asked, I was being interviewed on CNN before I came in here, and they asked me about your senator from this state. And did I think he was a formidable candidate? And I said, yeah, I like Tim Scott. I think he's a good man. And I think he tries his very best every day for the people of this state and for the country. And I've known him now for 10 years, and I like him a great deal personally. I just think I'm better qualified having been a governor for 8 years than he is having been in the legislature. And someday he and I may have to have that argument. But I don't have anything bad to say about almost any of my other colleagues in this race in terms of the kind of people they are. But here's my problem with them and why I got in. They won't tell you the truth about Donald Trump. They won't do it. They're afraid of him. And they say they're afraid of his voters. Let me tell you something, everybody. No politician in this country owns any voters. Our birthright is that we get to listen and speak and reason and decide. And he doesn't own any voter in this state or Iowa or New Hampshire or Nevada or any other states that are come after it. So they shouldn't be afraid of anything. You deserve two things as voters in this country. You deserve the truth, first and foremost. And the truth is not negotiable. We've gotten to a point in our country where everybody thinks that, like, the truth is their truth. So, if you hear something on one station you don't like, you just turn it to a station you do like. And then you'll hear the truth you want to hear. Truth's not negotiable, everybody. Our mother and father taught us that. I tried a couple of times to negotiate the truth with my parents. As you might imagine, it did not go well. I had a Sicilian mother. Let me tell you, it never went well. My mother's advice to me is guiding me in this race. I lost her 19 years ago. She never got to see me be governor. She never got to see me run for president. But something in the back of her mind must have been telling her what kind of man she would have to raise to have a chance to do that. She used to say to me, Christopher, remember this. Be yourself. Because then tomorrow, you don't have to try to remember who you pretended to be yesterday. And it's great advice. And all these folks who are running in this race should get real with you. They know everything I just said. And you know the worst part? They whisper it to me. You're doing great. Go get him. Let him have it. You're the guy from New Jersey. You can do it. Somebody asked me, I was being interviewed at the New York Post the other day, and they asked me, why are you best equipped to take on Donald Trump? I said, 2 reasons. I've known him for 22 years. I said, second reason is, guys from New Jersey have been dealing with obnoxious guys from New York our entire lives. And we know how to deal with them. I'll end with this, then take your questions. Our country is at a moment where we have to decide whether we're going to be big or small. We're so small right now. Think about the small things we're arguing about. Small things. I got asked on CNN today, I didn't know about this till I got here late today, that Governor DeSantis is now saying that he wants to bring a lawsuit on behalf of Florida pension holders against InBev beverages because of the decisions that Bud Light made on their advertising, and maybe it affected the value of the stock. Let me tell you something. You all have rendered the verdict on Bud Light. You didn't like their advertising? You stopped buying their beer. That's what America is all about. You don't need the government in there making these decisions for you about what you like or what you don't like, what you'll buy or what you won't buy, what you'll support or you won't support. The power of the American people is the power of your wallet. You don't like what Target's doing, you don't go there. You don't want what Bud Light's selling, you don't buy it. You go down and you buy Coors Light or you buy Modelo or you buy whatever the heck you want. There's another beer there, like lots of them. But see, Governor DeSantis thinks that that's an issue that gets everybody riled up, and it's small compared to the big issues we have. But if he can just ride that horse as hard as he possibly can, maybe he'll get you so angry that you'll say, yeah, I'll vote for the angry guy. No, not that angry guy, the other angry guy. I mean, hell, man, I'm not angry about anything. I'm not angry. I'm determined. I don't want to fight for myself. I want to fight for you. Because if you win, I win. By doing big things. In 1776, if you had taken a poll in this country, the poll would have been in favor of the crown. Nobody wanted to fight Great Britain. It was the biggest army in the world. They thought those guys at Philly were crazy. Adams, Jefferson, Washington. Nuts. They didn't poll it. They said, I know what's right, and we need our own country to be truly free. Thank God they did, because here we are, and we wouldn't be otherwise. In 1861, Abraham Lincoln had hard decisions to make. He could have let the South go. We've been 2 small countries. Instead, he decided to go big and said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And we sacrificed a lot of blood and treasure and sadness. But what happened after that war? Our country was bigger and stronger and better. And in 1941, Franklin Roosevelt stood up and said, I am not going to let Hitler and Mussolini and Hirohito have authoritarianism across the entire world, and they're coming for us next. And we sacrificed, men and women sacrificed incredibly, both here at home and overseas, to fight that war, and we won it. And what happened at the end of it? America was bigger, stronger, freer, and richer than we had ever been. And in 1981, that California governor said, the Soviet Union is an evil empire, and I am going to relegate them to the dustbin of history. 8 years later, the Berlin Wall fell. And 10 years later, the Soviet Union was gone. We had to sacrifice a lot to do that. A lot more government money got spent, and lives got risked. But where did we come at the end of it? America was the only superpower, freer, stronger, richer than we had ever been before. We're at the same moment now, and the adversary on the other side is the Chinese, and we know it. We got to decide. Do we want to win again? Do we want to go big? Or do we want to continue to fight about these small issues? I'm sorry, the small issues can be amusing, but they don't make a great country. I'm running for president of the United States because I want to do the big things. I want to do the big things again so that we can be stronger, freer, richer, and a leader all over the world. So for that lady who asked me over at the Palmetto Club, I gave her the short version of that. Why I'm in this race, that's why I'm in this race. And I'm here in South Carolina because you know what? You have a unique position and you know it. We'll get through Iowa and New Hampshire, and then we're probably going to be coming down here. Brace yourselves. With the way these dates are working, we're all going to probably be here for a month bugging you poor people with our TV ads and our town hall meetings. But here's what I'd ask you to do. Go to all of them. Don't just come to mine. Go to all of them. Ask us all questions. Challenge us. This is not a TV show. This is not sitting across a fake conference table in a fake conference room and saying you're fired. This is the real deal. And we are at a moment of history. It is time to get the showman off the stage and try to get the people who know and care about this country back in charge of it. We don't need two people 160 years old combined on the ballot this November. You know, everybody says our country's so divided. Let me tell you one thing we're not divided on. I saw a poll the other day. 70% of Americans say they don't want it to be Trump and Biden. Hell, man, let's give them a parting gift and say, you united us. Get out. Both of you. Go to the beach. Do whatever you need to do. Thank you for your service. Time to go home. It's time for us to start doing the big things again. So I'm proud to be here. I love this country. I care deeply about it. And we can talk about a lot of other big things when you ask your questions of me. Anything is in bounds. I just remind you, I am from New Jersey. So you know what that means. It means you can ask me anything you want, and I will answer anything you ask me, and I will not sugarcoat it. But if you decide you want to have a little argument, we'll have it. And we'll have a good one. So Jordan's back there with the microphone. Raise your hand, and let's start with the first question right back here.
Hi, I'm Craig Howland, originally from Connecticut.
Well, 1 second. Let's get the microphone turned on. We got it on?
Is that on? Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I came down on a lark, but I'm glad I came because I'm exactly your age, and I remember well what you're talking about in the late 70s when we whooped somebody's tail in hockey.
Yes.
Boy, were people screaming in Vermont when I used to ski up there at the Killington. But I think we need somebody your age right now espousing the exact ideas you know, bringing forth. Quick story, my brother-in-law is an executive headhunter, retired now, mid-70s. He went from Fairfield, Connecticut down to West Palm to his other property. Interesting story, around 1990, circa that era. I'm an engineer doing NASA-level work at cable wave systems, microwave electronics, which is my field. And he said, I got invited to go down to New York City to Trump Plaza, and he was an executive headhunter, placing people at Exxon, major corporations. And he was down there, and he said, I was invited as a guest, and I had breakfast in the morning early. And he said that it was basically just cereal. And when the meeting was over, he was going to screen candidates for Trump. He said, I got stuck with the bill, which is like $50 for a bowl of cereal. And he said he got a very strange, odd feeling about it, and what you're mentioning about the casinos failing. I'd been down there. I'd been in the Trade Center before they fell numerous times when it was new. I'd been to those casinos, and I knew exactly what you're talking about. So, you know, that shows the character, and we've all seen what's been going on.
Yeah, look.
Too much radicalism, and we need moderation.
And look, we need someone who cares about the country as a whole, not just about themselves. And, you know, the fact is, when you hear him talking, he's talking about he will be the retribution. Is that what we really want behind the desk in the Oval Office? I am your retribution? He'll be his own retribution, everybody. Won't be ours. And I want you to think about something. The presidency is too big a job for any man or woman to do by themselves. You got to have great people around you. He hired a lot of really good people the first time. Where are they now? All 4 of his chiefs of staff are openly opposed to him being reelected. Both of his secretaries of state openly opposed to him being reelected. Both of his secretaries of defense openly opposed to him being reelected. Both his attorneys general openly opposed to being reelected. Both his White House counsels, his lawyers, openly opposed to him being reelected. His Secretary of Transportation, his Secretary of Commerce, everybody who was close to him not only won't work for him again, they are out there saying they are opposed to him being elected. Who is going to work for this man? Forget about the C team. This is going to be the F team. And it will be showtime again, everybody, for him. And so, you know, I have to tell you, and I said this the other day in response to your comment. They asked me about why I thought a billionaire was taking all this money to pay his own legal fees. And I had a weak moment on television. I actually absolutely told the unvarnished truth. I said, he's the cheapest SOB I've ever met in my life. And he is. He just is. And so that's okay. It's okay to be cheap if that's what you want. It's his money. He ain't cheap with ours, though. $6 trillion to the national debt. Not cheap with ours. Yes, ma'am. Who's got the microphone? Where are we?
Thank you. My name is Steve Hassel. I'm retired from the Air Force, 30 years active duty and reserve. Thank you. I never thought I'd see the day that our Capitol would be rioted. It really disgusted me. That's not why we serve. And so my question to you, Jack Smith, the special counsel, it looks like he's coming down pretty soon. Gerald Ford lost a second term. Maybe it was because he pardoned Nixon. I don't know, but I think the chess game is on, and I think Trump is losing. What do you think?
Well, look, because I was a prosecutor for 7 years of my life, I think I understand this better than most, and I'm happy to just quickly go through it. The New York case, I think, is a pile of garbage. I would have never brought that case. Look, the Manhattan DA's job is to make sure that he keeps the people of Manhattan safe and secure. I don't know how bringing a case against a 77-year-old guy for paying off a porn star to keep quiet about having sex with him 7 years ago makes Manhattan any safer. I don't think you needed to bring that case, especially when I go to Manhattan a couple of times a week. And man, you don't want to walk around there right now. You just don't. So I think that case shouldn't have been brought. Doesn't mean his conduct was good. It wasn't. You shouldn't be paying off a porn star to keep, porn star to keep quiet before an election so we don't find out that you had an affair with her. Not kind of character you necessarily want behind the desk in the Oval Office, but it's not a crime. On the documents case, look, you served, and you know that those military plans are secret for a reason. Because if our opponents get their hands on them in any way, it puts men like you and the women who serve as well at risk. Put aside all the other stuff he did, he was putting our servicemen and women at risk by having those documents laying around. What was he doing with them anyway? He was still pretending to be president, everybody. He kept those documents to pretend to be president. And for 18 months, and I love the people who say he should have never had his house raided. It was horrible, terrible. Well, guess why his house was raided? Because for 18 months, they asked him voluntarily to give the stuff back. By letter, by phone call, to his lawyers, finally with a grand jury subpoena. Guess what? He would not be facing the charges he's facing today if he had done what any one of us would have done. Give the damn papers back. What are you doing with them? You're not the president anymore. Why do you need the secret war plan against Iran? No one's calling to ask your opinion. Joe Biden's not calling to say, hey, Donald, what do you think about the Iran thing? Not happening. He did it to himself, and worse. He lied and obstructed the government from getting that stuff back. He's in trouble on that case, and that case is now set for May 20th of 2024. If you're a Republican in this room who is committed to wanting to defeat Joe Biden because you think he's not the right president, why in God's name would we nominate somebody who is going to be on federal criminal trial 5.5 months before Election Day? It is insanity. He did it to himself. And about January 6th, I don't know what the charges are going to look like. And I'm a careful prosecutor. I don't comment on these things. You know, you remember when the last one was getting ready to come out? Remember they announced it on Friday, but they didn't release the indictment until Monday. So all weekend, you had talking heads all over TV giving their opinions, and they kept asking me, and I'm like, I have no opinion. I haven't read the document yet. How about I find out what they're charging him with before I say whether he's guilty, innocent, or whether the charges are good? So I'm a stickler for that stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen. But in Atlanta, they have one of the biggest RICO statutes, broadest RICO statutes of any state in the country. And today, it was reported that they intend to charge him under the racketeering statute in Georgia. And what that means is that he set up a corrupt organization to try to commit a crime. That's coming too. Like, what's left? What's left? Look, I prosecuted cases for 7 years in New Jersey, and I'm proud of what we did. We did 130 political corruption cases against Republicans and Democrats without a defeat. 130-0. We put 10% of the New Jersey State Legislature in jail. 10%. Which you can imagine made it incredibly comfortable when I then got elected governor and went down with the 90% we missed. But I know what I'm talking about in this stuff, and we need to move on. We need to move on. And we need to move on to a president who understands what law enforcement is all about. And I end the answer with this. He said that it was okay to suspend the Constitution if you think the election was stolen from you. And when he was asked about that by Bret Baier, he stood behind it. Now, I want to remind you what the oath of office is for President of the United States. One of the things you swear to do with your hand on a Bible is to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Not suspend, defend. Anybody, in my opinion, who says that it's okay to suspend the Constitution is disqualified from being President of the United States. He is disqualified. I pointed this guy. Let me go to him first, sure, and then I'll come right back to you.
I'm from New York, and I thank you for having us. Couple of questions. I disagree with a lot of what you say on Donald Trump, but I respect what you did in New Jersey, and I want to know if me and my family can take a picture with you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to take a picture right now. How about this? All right. Come on. Jordan will take the picture. Come on. What's your name, brother?
Nicholas.
Nicholas, nice to meet you. Here we go. You're in the family, too. What's your name?
Nala.
Nala, nice to meet you. All right. Thank you, my man. Excellent. Thank you, sir. Nice to meet you, man.
Hey, Governor Christie, Patrick with AARP here in South Carolina.
Right.
So I've probably asked you this question before. 1.2 million people in South Carolina depend on the Social Security check, probably a lot of folks in this room. What would a Christie presidency do to make that solution solvent for future generations?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because 11 years from right now, 11 years, Social Security will be bankrupt. And under the law, that means an automatic 25% reduction in benefits immediately for everybody who's receiving Social Security. Now, for some of you in this room maybe taking Social Security now, some of you, like me, are close, and by 11 years will clearly be taking Social Security. A 25% reduction in Social Security for men and women who are relying upon it to pay their rent, to buy their food, to help support themselves, is unsustainable. The most disgusting moment in Joe Biden's presidency, in my view, was his State of the Union speech, when he stood up and said, can we all agree we're not going to do anything to Social Security? And both parties stood up and cheered. Well, no one, except for me, afterwards on ABC, explained to people what that meant. Doing nothing means a 25% reduction in every person's benefits. It can't happen. So everything's got to be on the table. And it means, should we have means testing? Does Warren Buffett need Social Security? Does Mark Zuckerberg? Does Elon Musk? Do people who have gathered enormous wealth, as much as I respect them for it, I don't want to take any of it, but once they have it, do you really need the Social Security check? Secondly, retirement age. Not for people in their 50s or 60s who are too close to retirement to change what they can do to prepare for retirement. But Mary Pat and I have an eldest son who's 30 years old. If I tell him now that the retirement age is going to be a few years higher than what it is right now, and he's got 35 years to prepare for it, if he doesn't, he's got bigger problems than whether he prepared for Social Security. We need to have that conversation. I'm not someone who will favor raising taxes, because I think our taxes are high enough, and I don't think we need to do it. I think we can make those other kinds of adjustments. But here's the thing about this race. I'm the only person in this race who will look you in the eye and say, I'm going to make changes that will save and strengthen the Social Security program. And you know the last president who did it? It was Ronald Reagan, who said, I will not let Social Security go down. It was ready to go bankrupt. And the things that Reagan did in the 80s have preserved this thing until 2034. For 50 years. I want to preserve it for another 50. And everybody in this race who says that they won't discuss the issue or says, we don't need to do anything, or I'll come up with something, beware. I'll tell you what Donald Trump said to me 8 years ago. I came out with a plan on Social Security 8 years ago. I was worried about it 8 years ago. And Trump came up to me on the debate stage one night during the commercials. And by the way, if the RNC really wanted to make money, what they do is sell pay-per-view for what's going on during the commercials. Because there's like 6-7 minute commercial break, and here are all of us standing on stage, right? What the hell do you do? You're not allowed to go talk to your advisors. You can go and say hello to your wife or husband or children, but you basically have to talk to each other. And by this time, everybody hated Trump, except for me. Jeb wouldn't talk to him. Marco wouldn't talk to him. Ted wouldn't talk to him. They all hated him. And so the only person he had to talk to was me. So he came over to me and he goes, by the way, he goes, I saw that thing you put out on Social Security and Medicare. He goes, it's really, really smart. I said, oh, thank you, Donald. He goes, I'll never do it because it's not popular. But he said it's really smart. Is that the kind of president you want? Because if you reelect him, I guarantee you he will do nothing. He'll blame somebody else, and he'll be long out of Dodge by the time the 25% cut comes. So we've got to go back to the way Reagan dealt with this in the 80s, be smart about this, deal with it head on, so that nobody goes to their bank account and sees their direct deposit 25% less than it was the month before, because that will cost lives. And all this grandstanding by everybody else in this race, because no one else will talk about it. And I get reporters who come to me and say, what are you, stupid? What are you talking about Social Security for? Just ignore it. I want to do the big things. This is a big thing for the men and women in this country who have spent their whole lives paying into that fund every 2 weeks out of their paycheck. that we need to keep our faith with them. And that's exactly how I'll do it. Right here.
Governor Christie, you spoke to us about your service as governor while the legislature was heavily Democratic, and yet you made progress there. The country now is split almost in half on so many issues. How can you get beyond that? How can you help us get the country beyond it so we're not so polarized?
Good question, an important question. And I can only refer back to how I did it in New Jersey. Right after I got elected, the state Senate elected a new Senate president. His name was Steve Sweeney, and he was the president of the Iron Workers Union. As you might imagine, another shy and retiring type, like me. And he was from the southern part of our state, and I said to the troopers, this is before I'm sworn in, I said, I want to go down to Steve Sweeney's office. They said, do you have an appointment? I said, no, just let's go. It's a 2-hour drive from my house to his office. And I just showed up at his office. And I walked in, and his secretary said, Governor-elect, I don't think the Senate president's expecting you. And I said, no, I was just in the neighborhood, and I decided to stop by. So she said, okay, I'll go get him. So poor Steve comes out embarrassed because he had just come from working out, and he was in sweatpants and a T-shirt and sneakers. He's like, Governor, I didn't expect you. And I said, no, I was just in the neighborhood. He goes, Bull, your neighborhood's 2 hours away. I said, all right, well, I came down to see you. Let's go in your conference room. And we sat down in the conference room. He goes, what's up? And I said to him, Steve, I got one question for you. I said, for the next 8 years, do we want to make headlines or do we want to put touchdowns in the end zone? And he said 4 years. And I said 8 years. I was right. I said, what do we want to do? I said, because if you want to put touchdowns in the end zone, I promise you 2 things. I will always listen to you. And when I put out my hand and I give you my word, whether it turns out to be a good political deal or a bad political deal for me, I will keep my word. And he looked at me and he said, I want to put touchdowns in the end zone. I said, good. I stood up, I shook his hand. And if anybody in this room, civilian or reporter, goes back and talks to Steve Sweeney today, he will tell them that I always kept my word to him. Politics is still a business of people. And we have dehumanized this thing by not talking to people, but tweeting at them. By not going to dinner with them, but yelling at them in front of big rooms of big people. We've dehumanized it. Some of the best political advice I ever got was from a friend of mine who said to me, he was going to see the New York Times, the editorial board of the New York Times as a Republican. I said, what are you doing? And he said to me, no, you don't understand, Chris. He said, it's harder to hate up close. It's harder to hate up close. So the first thing you do as President of the United States is to spend time with these people. Get to know them. Get to know what their families are like. You're not going to get all of them. Some of them are going to be, awful people, and they're just not going to want to meet with you. That's not anywhere near most of them. On both sides of the aisle. Listen to them. Find out what their priorities are. They got elected too. And then use the bully pulpit of the presidency to persuade, to get the public behind your point of view. And then go in there and negotiate the best possible deal you can to make progress. Ronald Reagan used to say, the guy who disagrees with me 20% of the time is not my 20% enemy. He's my 80% friend. We've forgotten that. And so it's not easy, and it's not guaranteed. But it worked for me for 8 years in one of the toughest states in this country. And certainly one of the toughest states for a Republican. You need to get people back to understanding that what you expect from us is to put touchdowns in the end zone, to accomplish something. Not just go down there and blow hot air and score points on cable TV. And then come back 2 or 4 years later and say, wasn't I great? You saw my speeches. Yeah, no, we didn't do that, but that wasn't my fault. It was his fault. And just vote for me again. Everything will be fine. We can't do that anymore. The problems are too big. And more than that, the opportunities are too great to take a pass on spending the time. Believe me, there were many nights at 11 o'clock at night, Mary Pat and I would be in bed, and my phone would ring. And it would be the Senate president coming home from a dinner or some type of meeting. And she would say to me, really? 11 o'clock at night? This guy? Come on. And I'd say, I got to take the call. I took the call every time because I never ever wanted him to be able to say that when he had something to say, I wasn't willing to listen. Now, this is also a guy who on the front page of our state's largest newspaper said one morning he wanted to punch me in the head. So it wasn't all sunshine and roses, and we didn't go out to dinner every night, but we got the people's work done. It's harder to hate up close. I've experienced this. The same way Reagan experienced it in California with a whole bunch of unruly Democrats. And he understood how to make things happen. You look at his relationship with Tip O'Neill. They disagreed on almost everything, but they found a way to cut taxes. Every day, and you got to have more than one club in the bag.